Meeting will now come to order. This meeting will now come to order. Mrs. Swanson, will you lead us in the pledge, please? I'm sorry, roll call. No, I'm sorry. It's fine. We just made a fuss over my sheet here and I didn't follow it, so I'm sorry.
Mr. Gambiani?
Here.
Mr. Matheson?
Here.
Mr. Paulson?
Here.
Mrs. Swanson? Here. Mr. Vroman?
Here.
Mrs. Coghill is not here yet. Mrs. Intihar?
Here. Now, Mrs. Swanson, will you lead us in pledge? Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, this is a workshop tonight, so I will ask for a motion in a second to suspend the rules and adjourn to workshop setting.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mrs. Swanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Or do we need a roll call? Okay. All right, Dr. Schuler.
Thank you. We've got two topics on the Committee of the Whole agenda for tonight. The first being to provide an update on professional development plan. That's a goal that the board set at the beginning of this year, and so we're bringing you an update on current status of professional development as well as projected needs of professional development for next year. It's an update to the goal, and then we'll transition from that into an update on our capital facilities document and some recent work that's been done on that to bring to the board, I think, some focus to that document. So we'll start first with professional development and Ms. Dahlquist.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go through some of the big picture plans for next year for professional development. This was a group effort. We've had a lot of committee work and principal involvement in this. And I first want to highlight how this fits in with Vision 2018. Obviously, any of the things up there with student learning and support systems take professional development and communication and time to develop. So even though there are specific things up there that may not directly say professional development, without professional development and putting it all into a system, nothing gets done. So that's kind of the backbone behind what we do. And what we really are trying to do, especially now in all these times of change of education, we've got PARC and we have all the things with evaluation and we have technology. There's more change than any year before practically that I can think of. And it's more important for everybody within District 200 to really remain focused and know what our big picture is and what we're trying to do. So as I go through the plan, the emphasis was really how do we fit all of these things that we do, whether it's in student learning, whether it's in student services, how does it all connect and how do we put it together? I wanted to highlight that the funding for all of this is through the No Child Left Behind acts with the Title I and Title II, so you will not see a whole lot of district dollars that are allocated to this. And our big focus, of course, is instruction and our learning environment. And if you recall, last year about this time, Rod and I talked about what the future of instruction and technology, our FIT team, had created this big picture of what our learning environment would be. And that mission is up there on the slide, and I won't read it to you. But as you can see, the things that are included there are not just things that are measured by a PARC test or by previously ISAC. There's a lot of things about what we do in teaching students to collaborate and create and apply this to outside world that are not just things that are measured by a standardized test. And this and creating of that, and it gets a lot more detailed when we share it with staff. There are 6 different areas that even fall into that. We've isolated it just a little bit more of what specific areas we're going to cover out of that mission statement. And if you can't see what's on the screen, don't worry about that because you have a big packet that has that all in a lot larger print, so don't worry if you can't really see what's on the screen. I want to focus on what's in the middle. That's where we're going with our learning environment, and the two big pieces that we're going to be concentrating on is a standard mastery. That's where we've got posted learning targets using our formative assessment, really making engaging instruction. That's part of our learning environment plan. And then that collaboration and creation piece. How do we set up classrooms so that students are learning about how to collaborate together? And we're also tying in the social and emotional learning standards through that piece of that. So this is where we're headed, how we're going to measure and monitor that. We're going to continue to do all the classroom walkthroughs that we've been doing, but we've added some pieces about collaboration and creation so that we're monitoring how that's being implemented in the classrooms. Principals are still going to be looking at it, and of course staff evaluations. So that's that section there in the middle. The section across the top and the bottom are the tools that we're going to use to really focus in on those learning environments. And tools themselves sometimes need professional development. One of our main tools that we use, you've been hearing that for years, professional learning communities. We started out with what we want students to be able to know and be able to do, and now we're moving into how to use data off of all of those assessments to improve and then differentiate instruction, how to meet the students that are at the top end, those students that are struggling, and all the students in between. And that'll be our focus with our professional learning communities, and that also affects our learning environment with standards mastery. Then you see at the bottom that technology piece. I really want to highlight that I think District 200 is doing some things very well. Rod and I were at a Google symposium today, and everybody was talking about, oh, I wish we would have started with the focus of instruction. I wish we would have started there. Okay, well, now that we already got all these devices, now we're trying to go backwards and really decide what we are supposed to do with them. So we felt really good about that we're setting the stage first of what type of learning environment we would like, and now we're talking about how to use technology to get there. So that last piece, again, is a tool. There are some things we can do with the learning environment without technology that are fabulous, but there are some things that technology helps us do, and our focus is going to be with Google. GAF stands for Google Applications for Education, and also with our Google Mail and Calendar will help us in some of our daily work activities. So technology and the PLCs are the tools that we're really going to be highlighting to work on the implementation of our learning environment. Some of the things that we're going to be, ways that we're going to accomplish that, which are far to the right, we have our Institute Days that we've already planned out some of the big main topics for that for next year. You may have heard of School Days. I didn't know whether I should put that on here because people are like, what is School Days? Rod's department puts together a full day of training after school gets out, and it's Google training for school. So I think that's a District 200 term, Google, right? Yeah. So we call that, School Days. We have our week of learning in August where we have a lot of staff that show up without compensation and are here for a lot of trainings that go along with that. Then there's specific things that'll go into the learning environment. When I meet with the all-day kindergarten teachers, obviously that's not everybody that's on there, but that will tie into how are they doing with standards mastery, how are they doing with teaching social emotional skills and collaboration at the kindergarten level. There are obviously things when I'm working with high school science teachers that look very different, but all of that ties into these big picture areas of focus. Also, I'm not going to go through the whole detailed plan that you have with you, but I do want to highlight that we are coming up with a more comprehensive way to onboard our new staff. We have a lot of staff that will be coming on in a year when we have a lot of retirements. And with budget cuts a while ago, we went away with some of our mentoring programs, and we are bringing some of that back in the form of having lists that we are not only going to do before school starts, but also during the fall and right before winter, where we're going to be pulling our new teachers in and working with them on some of the other things that we've already done with PLCs, helping them with technology, making sure that they have all the resources and the trainings that we've been doing the last 2 years for Common Core and curriculum and instruction. You'll also see on Institute Days, there are differences at elementary, middle, and high school. We're going to continue with the elementary work with the reading framework that we started out. And then we have the new science standards that are implemented at the middle school coming this fall. So they'll see some training just for middle school science teachers to continue that. And next February is the deadline where I'm going to be training all of the elementary teachers on our new science standards and where that goes. So there are some differences on the different levels. And then we're also creating a big list for our principals as instructional leaders and what things we would like them to know and be able to do and how we're going to support them, and a kind of a monthly calendar and things that we'll be doing with them to support them. Secretaries are on there, teaching assistants, our LLC directors, reading teachers, some of the things that aren't even on the slide, the all-day kindergarten teachers need specialized training. So there are a lot more detailed plans in that big picture, but I wanted you to see how they all fit together. And I want you to know that we're spending quite a bit of time explaining and making sure that staff sees how all of these initiatives go together. How did we come up with this plan? We did survey the staff on their needs and where they thought we should go. We do have a district professional growth committee that is composed of teachers and administrators and teacher union officials that went through and talked about this. I worked with each level of the principals and then also with senior leadership team to make sure that all of the things that we needed to get done next year fit into this plan, or at least we'll see how they can connect to that big picture focus. Often I get asked, well, Faith, if you had a whole lot more money, what would you do? And it's not really about more money. If I had a chance to dream, it would be more about finding coaching and support for what's already going on. To bring in outside speakers and outside trainings, one of the great things that's happened with the internet is you can get a whole lot of that stuff and the new ideas in for very, very little amount of money. The complicated piece is how to actually have it in all of our classrooms and have it be applied and have it make sense and have it be the coaching and the just right assistance that is needed for staff. We spend a lot of time talking about students, about how to differentiate instruction for them. Staff needs that too. And that's where that coaching piece and really surrounding it around a common goal, but differentiating within that common goal takes place. So I know you've had a little bit of time to look at the detailed plan and also to look at the PowerPoint prior to this evening. So I'll entertain questions that you might have.
I've got a question just in general about, we currently have a compensation plan where there's incentives for teachers to get more educated, to get a master's and so on and so forth. And we spend money supporting that program, okay? And I don't know what that number is right offhand, I'm sure we have that. Here, how does that link or coordinate with this process? In other words, if we're sending someone to school to learn, and we're spending dollars to do that, and it also costs us more money as they get more educated, how does that link into this program? Are we getting shared information? Does it, I guess I'm trying to make sure we're spending those dollars appropriately, or is there a better way to do it? I'm challenging that thought, I guess.
So your question is the compensation for staff that already have their master's degree or their hours past that?
No, I'm talking about basically those that we currently reimburse for, advanced programs. Okay, we spend, they incur tuition costs. We reimburse them as that occurs, no?
No.
Okay, so they pursue it, and then as they move along though, they do move up in the pay scale based on that. Okay, so there is a cost to us as they get more educated and so on. How does that link to this process? Do we tie that in because we are paying more for that, and is that information being shared in this process and so on, and is that the best way to spend those dollars?
So as far as the compensation of where people get master's degrees or advanced hours in a variety of topics, the way that that does feed back into the system is through professional learning communities, because they can bring that math expertise that they might have, or their advanced studies in whatever area that is, to that team. And then each of the schools also have a school instructional team that they will pick and choose what those topics are, and we certainly rely on a lot of our teachers for professional development. The week of learning activities that we plan, most of those are taught by our District 200 teachers, and many of them already have, I have a list of people that I think are math gurus. Most of them have their masters in math, and I rely on them to provide some of that in-house professional development training. So I think that having that expertise and sharing it across the team in a PLC pays off. Also, when we tap on them to do some of our professional development, whether it's at school level, at the last Institute Day, it was almost all done by staff where we had different sessions at the elementary level, and they presented some of the information that they had learned and applied from their advanced degrees.
So Faith, if I understand this right, in terms of your dream, obviously you don't need more money to spend on outside sources. But from what I gather from your saying you need more time, to me that's also money in terms of, gee, it would be nice to have people you could send out to the buildings as instructional coaches. So in other words, it's not something that one person can handle necessarily to do more. I think looks like you're really busy. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is, if I had a coach that a teacher could rely on when they run into an issue or when they want to try something new and they don't know how to quite get there, that is what you would like to have. So that kind of time, which indeed is really money because we'd have to hire staff to do it. So.
Correct, to be more staff and support to be able to do the things that really a lot of people are saying that'd be a great idea. How do I do that? How is that coaching going to happen? For example, Lee Cook, who's just phenomenal at what she does. She's kind of the one-man show running around trying to be a coach for all of these people. And while she's meeting with teachers at 6 o'clock on Friday night, and she had something at Panera's at Saturday, and all of those things, imagine the impact of having more people like Lee to be able to show and demonstrate how to do that instruction. Now, we are working with Lee so that more people have Lee's skills and building capacity within the buildings, but they also have a full-time job of teaching, so they're not always as accessible and to be able to go around and do some of that coaching. So you're exactly right. What I'm talking about isn't free, but it's not, let's bring in a speaker, let's do, it's that coaching piece, and that comes with a price tag too.
So does that look different than, because what do we have now, or we did have in each building, wasn't it the curriculum person, which we don't have anymore, right? But is somebody there? There isn't, yeah. So this coaching thing would be a different position than how that person, the previous person was.
Right, and my point in putting that out there is if I had a chance to dream, this is not actual things that we're going to do next year, but if, and how could we really make the professional development happen at a much faster rate and more in depth, it would be to have staff to do that instructional coach piece. We used to have curriculum leaders, things that worked kind of with the educational services department, but they also belonged to a building so that there was that partnership on a daily basis back and forth on coaching. We're trying to do some of that with my staff, and we're out at schools a lot, but the more people we would have to provide that professional development around a common focus, the faster and better we could be.
I want to point out just two quick things tied to what Faith is saying that I think just important to note. Number one, if you look at a lot of the impact studies done in education. So there are a lot of studies out there that look at specific practices and try to connect to the impact on student learning. Instructional coaching, if done the right way, is one of the strategies that has the highest of impact studies. So again, that doesn't just mean you make people available and assume that it's done the right way. It has to be a very intentional process of coaching that's different from the kind of curriculum positions that you used to have in buildings. So just impact-wise, keep that in mind that I think there's great impact there. Two, that was something that I think came out of discussion through Engage 200 as well, is that I think the community expressed some interest in that type of instructional support if done the right way. And so I think, while we're not bringing a proposal to you for coaching next year, you've got some natural turnover in staff coming in the next couple of years, and so with that comes some budget flexibility perhaps that you didn't have before. But I don't think you can, one, wait until you potentially have the resource available to consider. You've got to have, I think, some of the legwork done in terms of developing the model so that it's ready to go. So I don't think it's just dreaming. I mean, it's something that I've asked, Faith to begin to put some thought to with that professional development committee and her team of folks, is what would a coaching model look like that ultimately would support all of these pieces. But again, much like technology, so the same concept that applied to technology, where we focused on what is the objective, what does the instruction environment look like, and then how does technology fit into that. Same with coaching. You don't put coaches in place, then decide how you're going to ultimately use them. You build the model first, and then determine at what point you can apply the resource to make it happen.
It's so relevant to my company because that's exactly the model that we have as coaches, and I'm trying to think how to benefit, that's how to get at the highest level of production is be coached. So if they benefit because they are paid by the person they're coaching, but if we could somehow be incentive to, and there's train the trainer, like I said, we have that, so you have to train the right people, but they have to be the right personality and mindset and all to fit that mold. But I'm like Lee Cook, I'm sure there's many. But how could we make it a financial benefit for them to want to be coached, or maybe even pay for it themselves because it's going to get them to some level, or I don't know. It's just interesting that it's exactly.
So if instructional coaches are maybe the ideal solution, if we could dream, those are people with limited time out of the classroom. Have we looked at considered external partners to help us with the coaching? I know some school districts have partnerships with other companies or other entities that help push that forward at a faster rate. I'm just curious if that's something we've looked into or could we look into?
Sure, that is something we could look into. I think ideally the instructional coach would be a person that's a full-time instructional coach that teaches just second grade in the morning and then it would be a full-time position that was a recent teacher but has that capability to do that. There are some partnerships that certainly provide a very specific, like a content expertise. They don't tend to be a generalist across the board or good instruction, but definitely those are things we can look at. As Dr. Schuler said, the first thing that we've been working really hard on is what are we trying to build? What does this learning environment look like? And then with our classroom walkthroughs, and we've recently generated a high school kind of list of look forwards too, then we kind of know this is really what we're attempting to build, what we want to get to. Then we can talk about what's the best way, whether it's outside partnerships, instructional coaches, continuing to do things with my department that'll perpetuate us to implementation of our learning environment fastest.
Yeah, Faith, can our PLC format also enhance coaching? I was encouraged, I had a teacher dinner earlier this week, and certainly the elementary teachers that attended, middle school teachers were really excited and embracing the PLC concept, and even the high school teacher was there and said, now that we're focusing on each school with the 5 basic strategies, they're encouraged about how the PLC can work at the high school level. Is there some coaching opportunities that can come out of that?
Sure. Like anything, any new tool, whether we're talking about the professional learning community process or technology, we have teams that are doing really well at it, and we have teams that are struggling with it. And coaches could help take that process to the next level. Sometimes you'll have a group of people who have a very different ideology about teaching. Putting them all into a PLC can get a little interesting because they've got their different ideas, and sometimes they do need a coach to help them through that. But just like we were talking about earlier, that coaching piece can also, if you really work with one teacher in the PLC and you're working on questioning strategies, and you have one teacher within that PLC who really knows her stuff, then that can share across the rest of the PLC as well. So as soon as you have a few key people within each PLC, or even one, that have the skill set that you want, they have that opportunity and that conversation time to build it. So that trainer of trainers, like you were talking about, happens once you have some expertise in the PLC. It doesn't necessarily need to go to all PLC members, because they're having that time to talk about their data and their instructional practices. And the best way to get anybody to move is that if the person right next to you is doing something better than you are, and you have those results, and you're like, oh, I bet that would work with my group of students too.
You know, one of the things since we made those budget cuts a few years ago that has been most worrisome has been the cut in professional development. So I think it's fabulous to see this attention coming to it to try to structure it. And I'm sure professional development has happened anyway, but it's nice to see it in a cohesive package. I'm wondering if there's a plan to roll this out to teachers and staff so that they understand and see it that way. You know, at Chance to Chat, one of the teachers made the point, we said, if we could do anything to enhance your success as a teacher, what would it be? And this person said, you know, being able to go to some conferences makes me feel more like a professional. Now that sounds very feely touchy, but I think there's some truth to that. You know, there's some recognition that there is importance in what you're doing, and there's importance to be trained in it by somebody who's got some expertise. And I think a lot of times when things happen internally this way, it's not recognized by the staff as that sort of an activity. So I'm just wondering if there's been thought to that or some plan to that.
Great intro to what's about to happen with the principals and the instructional teams. Been meeting with the principals, so they all know about this, but if it's just a document or a piece of paper, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good, or else the rest of the staff has the plan as well. So we're meeting with the school instructional teams. Middle schools are doing their own meeting, but I've created a kind of a common PowerPoint so that their school instructional teams understand how all this fits together and what the plan for professional development is next year. I'll be meeting along with Julie with the elementary school instructional teams in June as we go through and talk about this, and they're kind of the leaders with that. I have meetings with both of the high school department chairs, and they'll understand that, and then they're going to build their school-based plan, their school improvement plan off of these same goals. And we'll be looking at not only our student achievement data, but our classroom walkthrough data, our PLC survey data, and the other things that we've been building on our dashboard, to then put them into this context of where we're going with a fit learning environment. And then their teams will share that with their school staff. It'll come in an email from me too, but the real impact is when their school teams will share this out. Also, when we roll out Week of Learning, the Week of Learning activities will all be tied to how is it fitting in with that standard mastery part of our learning environment, and also the collaboration creation piece. So we'll continue to connect those dots as new trainings come out so that they understand the big picture.
And that came up a few times out in buildings as we visited buildings to talk about Vision 2018, and some staff members asked that question, and I think we're able to clarify a few times, which I think it's just a process, going to take some time, that it's not a budget. It's not about just a budget cut anymore. So it's not that there's no money ever available for conferences, but we've got to be intentional on how you spend that money. So it's less about each teacher, you get one conference, where do you go? You know, what we've said to teachers is if you identify a need, and the best way to service that need is through some expertise that comes to the district or you going out, fair conversation, right? But it's need driven. It's not just, we got money, let's go back to everybody gets a conference every year or every 2 years. Because that's not a need driven approach, that's just a,
More of a perk
Yeah.
than it is a benefit to us.
And so then, actually, that's sort of a follow-up question I have in terms of money for professional development that we do have in the budget. How does that get out there? Does that come as part of just the building pot of money and the principals decide where that is spent? Is there something that comes directly from your department? I'm just wondering how that happens. And then secondly, is there a way to track professional development funding, if it will? And I'm not just talking about outside conferences, I'm talking about internal stuff within our budget. I think we've talked sometimes about trying to track our priorities within the budget on the idea that what you track is, you know, and measure is what you're more likely to accomplish and pay attention to. I don't know if it's possible to have essentially a line that says these are funds that are being used for professional development. I know it's a little blurry, but.
So the grants, as I kind of facilitated, put them together, you know, we do have line items for how we're going to use, whether it's outside speakers, which you'll see some of for the high school Institute Day in the fall, or whether it's substitutes that we are putting into classrooms to pull teachers out to give professional development, whether it's some stipends that we've paid teachers to provide after-school training or during week of learning to other. We have that, and we do keep track of what that those costs are. There isn't a whole lot of district money, and like we don't have what percentage of lead cook's salary or percentage, you know, like
Right,
all of those
right,
things are really important to our professional development, and they aren't easily looked at. But when you ask the question about how our outside conference, we don't do a whole lot of those anymore. The high schools have a little bit of money that they will send to, and there are some reoccurring things. Our advanced placement teachers are required to have a certain advanced placement training that can't be done in-house. They have to go outside to do that, so that's a reoccurring expense. We do very little of sending people off to reading conferences. As we're doing some of the things with science, we do allocate, well, we better have a few people go out and fuse that committee with new ideas. But the days of, well, every building is getting this amount of money to send people to conferences, we don't do that.
You know,
As a follow-up to that, I'm wondering if we wouldn't be actually better off tracking man-hours of training. You know, like man-hours of development. So maybe we could say to our public or in our annual report, you know, this year, so many teacher hours or FTE or however you want to quantify it, were spent on giving our teachers, you know, new skills. And instead of focusing on the cost, maybe the time would be more relevant.
Yeah, and again, I think that,
If we track it.
yeah, I think that'd be a discussion you could have in the future. I'd rather see you track it by goal and outcome. I mean, outcome in terms of what does it do for learning of students, what does it do for learning of staff, rather than, I mean, we could track that metric and probably publish to the community an impressive number of professional development hours. But again, I think it ultimately comes back to the outcome that, you know, they think Faith was was talking about.
And I agree with you, but I think what we have going on right now is so many things that we're doing to try to improve student learning that I think it might be difficult for us, and correct me if I'm wrong, to say, you know, what contribution each of those things made. And I think what Rosemary was trying to reach was, you know, what is the contribution that staff development is making? So I don't want to make work for anybody, but that's the only reason I kind of tried to quantify it in a little different way that might be easier for us to get our arms around.
This also was a topic today at the Google Symposium as we wrestled with how to do professional development. And a lot of things resonated with my beliefs in professional development that would make it a little more difficult to do what you're asking. I'm trying really hard for professional development not to be an event or a time that we did this on Institute Day, check. Every Monday at 3:30 to 5, we did it, check. We're building tools within my department that people can use on Saturday mornings. They can use at Friday night. I've got 2 minutes to watch a video that Lee put together on a new Google application. Great. And we're differentiating and bringing into small amounts of time. And we spent some time today at our table talking about how to not only have students be self-directed learners, but have staff be self-directed learners, and providing tools for differentiating and making the learning and the work environment, whether it's student or staff, so exciting and so engaging that you get really passionate about it, and it's those things that you're doing outside of the scheduled hours. I know some of my best learning does not happen when someone sends me, although today was great, to the symposium. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I am dying to learn more about this, and I'm reading and learning about things because I'm that excited about the topic, or I see the tool being that useful in my job. And the more that we can do that and create that type of need and those just right tools and the coaching piece to get people really passionate and excited about what they're doing, I think that's when phenomenal professional development happens. And it's hard to quantify that type of learning environment that I hope we're creating, not only for our students, but for the adults in our system too.
Just one final comment. I think that is, that's inspirational, just even for me to hear you say that. So I think that is great. I do think that people are humans, and like the Wizard of Oz, sometimes they need the piece of paper or the watch or whatever it is to remind them that they've got a heart or they've got brains. And so I think that there's some little balance that needs to be done there. And my sort of gut feeling is that there is a perception within the district that we have cut professional development and has gone down. So somehow we need to rebuild the perception that we are indeed doing professional development. It may look different, but there needs to be that understanding by people. So that's all I'm really trying to get at, whether it's tracking something, whether it's giving them a certificate, whether it's whatever it is. I think it goes to Joanne's thing of incentivizing people to some extent, and everybody responds to different incentives. So.
Faith, I had one question. The focus area of formative assessments, I see there's a guest speaker for the high school level, full day or whatever the timeline may be, and then the middle school level with same day, 1 hour. Was there any reason why you wouldn't put those together to experience that same situation?
Yes. A couple of reasons for the difference in there. Our middle school staffs are further along in where they're at with their thinking on the use of formative assessment data, so that's part of it. I've been providing some more of that training prior to this because they had common standards. The high schools have been spending quite a bit of time at identifying common standards and are now ready to do that formative assessment piece. We also had a couple of high school administrators that had went and they've already vested and heard that speaker. She's very geared toward high school world, and that is the reason that they are doing that. Middle schools, we did talk about, do we want to spend the full day in that? And they're like, no, we don't need a full day on that component. They're going to be incorporating more building-based after we talk about formative assessment with some technology pieces, and also starting to talk a little bit about grading that day.
One more question. Just again, I'm trying to get back to the understanding of this process. So we're giving general overview here at this level, this building level. That passes to the principal. Is that a valid statement? And then the principal has responsibility primarily over their building.
In conjunction with us, but yes, we've determined, and I worked with them to create the areas of focus. They may decide on for example, on the social emotional piece, we have some middle schools that have really been working at that for a long time. They're focused on how much in-depth knowledge their staff needs on that. If they're already posting daily learning targets around social emotional learning, it'd be very different than a staff that really hasn't spent much time with that. So to what degree their staff is ready to take those pieces may look different in each of the buildings. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I guess the ultimate objective is what I'm trying to get at is, we're passing that on at the building level. I hear more and more about accountability at the building level, that's happening out there. And I'm just trying to determine how we're going to measure the success, at each building and again, I recall we had a survey not too long ago that kind of applied to middle schools, and the elementary schools were much more progressive in accepting this than, say, the high schools were, it seemed to, and so on. So I guess ultimately we have a unit of measure that we have to deal with, and I'm just trying to see how that works.
Sure. So on all of these things, one of the tools that we're going to continue to use is my department gets a group of people together and we walk the classrooms at the building levels, and we have a Google form that we can use on my phone or my Chromebook on wherever, and we're keeping track of their learning targets in the classroom, where they shared, where was assessment taken during that lesson to be able to inform instruction. One of the things we look at is whether vocabulary instruction was explicit or not, and then we're keeping data on all of that and can do some comparisons with that piece. Also, with the school improvement plans, as they tie into what they're going to do with social emotional learning, what they're going to do with standards mastery, they're going to be writing their school improvement plans with their teams on this. I review and Julie reviews and Bob reviews what all that is, and we have conversations ongoing with them. They turn them in the fall, but that's part of the principal's evaluations on what they're doing with that. We have follow-up where we're going to this time have principals and teams where they do some peer reviews of those school improvement plans to be able to share out with that. And then principal evaluations do happen early because in the state of Illinois we've got to have them done by March 1st. But we're going to have time after that, because March 1st isn't the end of the school year, for how that goes after that. And then the data that you recall seeing is from the PLC survey. And that tells me quite a bit of information from the staff reporting out, so we'll use that tool as well. And then we have our district assessments from pre to mid to end of year that we draw comparisons of, not only from school to school, but also within teacher to teacher for principals to use. So that accountability piece isn't just decided at the building level. We have accountability measures here and comparisons that we draw here to know whether the school improvement plans that the principals and the teams came up with are being effective or not.
I had one final question. I had spoken with Dr. Schuler about this a little bit, but I think it might be something that the board, would like to hear about or know about. But I'd like to know what our experience is with new teachers coming in, and how well versed are they in the new standards? How well versed are they in the new social emotional learning standards? How well versed are they, and do we know which schools, for example, to recruit from, where we get the teachers who are good at measuring up to what we need in District 200 to where we are? So it all kind of ties into where's our future and how much more getting up to speed. I mean, we're always going to be doing things for our veteran teachers when something new comes out, we're gonna have to, you know, get them up, but are we getting the best that we can in terms of a good fit, and our teachers coming in with the skills that are expected in today's environment?
It's pretty hard right now with the limited number of new staff that we're hiring on a regular basis to say, you know, this particular college or this particular university is the place to go. My experience is that there isn't a lot of great new knowledge about application of Common Core. The instructors at the college level are like we are, where we're just, you know, putting it into place, and they haven't taught it. There's understandings about it, but to be able to teach it is different. And then there's the District 200 lens of what that looks like. One of the great things about Common Core is it is just a list of what we want students to know and be able to do. It doesn't say this is how you should teach it, and this is what the best instructional practices are. We get to decide that at District 200. So all of them need an induction into the District 200 way of doing things. Now, is a lot of it based on best practices and our colleges and universities talking about best practices? Yes, but until they have that lens or that framework of what we're doing, they still need training on that. And you can imagine as a new teacher and you're faced with 125 students, there's ever so much to learn, even if you've been through student teaching. So I am optimistic about how much of the technology application our new teachers have. They just seem to get that. They know Google. You know, they have those types of skills. They understand the learning environment that we may be trying to create, because that's the learning environment that they crave already because of their technology connections. So I don't have a good answer at all which university is doing the best. I don't know, Dr. Rammer, if you've got from the HR department, if you've got more insight into that.
Yeah, I think that we get a very good crop of new teachers because we're very selective, and we do a very intensive job of finding the A and B, if you will, the bluebirds for District 200. I think one of the challenges that we're facing in 200 in Illinois is the new licensure problem. For all intent and purposes, the only people that are going to get licenses to teach in Illinois have to come from Illinois schools. If you get your degree out of state, it's virtually impossible to get yourself certified or licensed to teach in Illinois. So there are a lot of good institutions doing good work in other states, but our ability to track them or attract them and hire them is pretty difficult, and that's a significant challenge. This kind of myopic view of Illinois as the only place where good education is occurring is not good for the profession in our state, and so that is a challenge. I think we've got good experience from students from Wheaton College. We have a lot of students from Wheaton College. They do a very good job in partnering with us. We also get good students from University of Illinois and the other institutions around here. Our colleges, universities are very good. But in the big picture, it would be nice to be able to find somebody from Indiana, Wisconsin, someplace else that are doing good things to attract them students here. But when they get to, I have my degree and I'm certified in that state, and I can't. There's no reciprocity. There's no. I can't transfer my license. Nope. There's 37 hoops, and open your wallet and start paying in order to come here, and it's a time-consuming process. So, I think our candidates are current and well capable, but I think in the big picture, there's other things that would be helpful for us to have available to us as well.
That's actually one of the initiatives of Vision 2020. And I believe that's actually some legislation that they're starting to form, or maybe have already formed, to try to get through the legislature. So there's an example of our alliance, and specifically Vision 2020, trying to move ahead on some of these issues.
Just one comment, really a compliment. As I looked at this, I thought, professional development, how do I use the devices that we don't have enough of? But this looks like a really, I mean, I see reading framework, I see next generation science standards at the elementary level, that's good. Social, emotional, and technology PLC, so it appears to me to be a very, very comprehensive overall professional development plan, so I appreciate that.
Yes, I echo that. Well done, and thank you so much. Dr. Schuler, any final comments on this, or should we go on?
I think it's time to move on, except for the one final comment I do want to make is people from Indiana are very smart, so we do have to fix that.
So are people from the University of Illinois.
I knew that was coming. All right, I think if we can move on then to our facilities topic, and I'm going to hand it over to Bill to make kind of some introductory comments, set the stage for the pieces on the facility plan we want to review tonight, and then he's got JR and Patrick here to help, I think, with this.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. Tonight we're going to take a look at an updated document, our capital facilities plan, which is not to be confused with our master facility plan, which is something we're going to talk a little bit about later. What we're talking to you tonight about is some updates and changes and additions to the document. And again, this document, and I'm sure you have this field to the JR will probably use, is a living, breathing document that we're constantly updating, looking for ways to improve. The document dates back in the format it's in now, back 4 or 5 years ago, and ran through the facilities committee, the board. Our board facilities committee, Mr. Broman was on that committee at the time when we were crafting this document into what you see it today. And again, we're always looking at ways to modify, improve, make it more readable, and attached to the board report were 4 documents, and JR is going to run through those all tonight and kind of give you some information about the facilities that we've included now in the overall plan. The board, I think, has copies in your green folder of 3 of the documents. We didn't want to print the 118-page document. I thought that was really a little hefty on the printing cost. Jeff would probably not be happy. We also are going to talk about our condition 1 items. Those are the ones that are most current in need, and we've broken those out on a year-to-year basis, and Jared's going to talk a little bit about those as well. And then some of the projects that we're looking at for this summer. So again, I'm going to turn it over to JR. We have our partners from Leggett Architects, Patrick Rosen and Paul Passetti, in the crowd with us as well to help, as they've been integral in forming this document, working with staff. We work with our building staff, our directors of both high schools, Tree over at Hubble, and JR works with his maintenance staff and a lot of the folks in the buildings to keep this document current and updated. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Robinson.
So scratch living and breathing. Still have fluid, ever changing and ongoing. So I didn't put a PowerPoint together, but like Bill said, we put 4 documents in your folder. There's also a flash drive, and that flash drive is that 110-page document that Bill referred to. That will also be posted on the website after tonight. All right, so Bill already introduced our architects, so thanks for Paul and Pat for being here to support us. I'd also like to recognize the facility committee made up of Mr. Gambiani, Mr. Paulson, Dr. Schuler, Mr. Farley, myself, and I won't say Mrs. Alex, I can't say her last name, so Erica. This, I'm not going to go through this document right now. I just want to tell you about what some of the refinements we've made to the document. So through our meetings. Go ahead.
Since we can't really see that, can we have lights so we can see what's in front of us?
Sure.
That'd be great, thank
Sure.
you. Because I can't see either one of them right now. Thank you, now I can see this one.
Okay. So just to, part of our committee work was we wanted to refine the plan, make it a little more usable and a better blueprint as we go forward. And so some suggestions were made and we've incorporated them in here. So I just want to go through some of the refinements and the changes that we First, we've prioritized all the work by condition. It's all right.
I wasn't
I'm
picking
loud
up.
enough, they don't know. We prioritize by condition. We have, we've broken out condition 1 into the 3 years that it's, it entails. So if you remember, condition 1 is 1 to 3 years, condition 2 is 4 to 8, condition 3 is 9 plus. So we've broken down the condition 1 by each year, and condition 1, year 1 would be year 2016. Actually, the next one would be 2017 and 2018. We reviewed all the costs that were involved in this, and so Paul and I spent a lot of time with a lot of stakeholders going through how we prioritize them by condition and the costs. We've inflated the numbers for years 2 and 3 by 4.5%. That's just not a CPI number. There's cost of equipment and labor that goes up, usually higher than those numbers, CPI numbers. So we've added 4.5% to them, but we stopped there. So condition 2 numbers and condition 3 numbers are at the 2018 level. Everybody follow me there? All right. And the last thing we did is we provided, and it's in your folders, a narrative overview by building. Now, I don't have it up on the screen, but it's a narrative overview. It's just a draft. As Erica and I refine it, we will get it in your hands formally. Okay, so that's kind of the background of what we were trying to do. And if there are no questions, I'll get into, or if anybody's got anything to add to it.
I think also in the upper left corner, you can see we've added some information relative to the building itself. In the document, we're going to see what year it opened, when it was renovated, the square footage of the building, and the acreage that the site sits on. I think that was something that's we felt would be helpful for the reader as they looked at the document to have just that background information relative to each building.
Can you refresh my memory? What does the general category MEP stand for?
Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing.
Oh.
All right, we good? So, in looking at the original document, we didn't include 4 buildings that we wanted to add in. So we have added Jefferson, Hubble, Woodland, and this building, the SLC. So now we have all of our buildings in our full report. So this document that you have, that I show on the board and you have in your folder, is just the 4 buildings, the new buildings, and I'm not going to go through them all. I just want to, I'd like you guys to focus on the Jefferson Early Childhood Center. And that's what's on the screen. And the interesting thing about Jefferson is that the entire building, all the work that needs to be done, has been prioritized as condition 1. You all know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that building, and we've had discussions on what to do with it, but if we're going to keep it, these are the things that need to get done in our estimation. The other thing we did, I'm not going to do that yet. So we totaled up the year 1 on the 3rd page. Also, another addition that's a good addition is that at the bottom of every building, any work that we've completed in recent years, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, we've added that to show you what we've done, when we did it, and what the value was. So for instance, at Jefferson, we replaced the fire alarm system last summer. Jefferson isn't the greatest example because it's all year 1, condition 1 stuff, but I just wanted to go through one of these with you, and I think we should probably stop and talk about these changes as well.
You have one of the references instead of year one is 1.3 on Jefferson. What does that mean?
Well, the 1.3, so condition 1 is condition 1, year 1. Condition 1.2 would be condition 1, year 2. 1.3 would be year 1, condition 1, year 3. Any other questions on this before I move on? I think it'll start tying in a little better on the next handout.
Are there any of these things, Jefferson, health or safety issues?
Yes, all of our health, life, safety issues are included in here.
So are there any that were like legally, like you would need to address them for sure this summer, or the building's not safe or healthy?
So JR, I think her question was not, are the health, life, safety things through like the health, life, safety audit in here, but which of the, basically when you total up, the year one, you're 5.6 million. Are there things that present safety risks to students if not addressed within that 5.6?
That's a great question, and I misunderstood it. Yes, there are. I'll give you a couple examples. When we look at providing a ranking of the work, and by condition 1 and then year 1, 2, and 3, you look at 5.6 million bucks, well, that's a big number. What happens if we don't do it? Well, it gets pushed off to the next year. It just gets deferred. We just kick the can down the road. The issue is this building is 57, 58 years old. And much of the equipment in this building is 58 years old. So when we say that we need to replace the boiler or add a boiler, it's because that boiler is 58 years old. And if you understand how boilers work, usually a boiler, according to ASHRAE standards, Mr. Paulson, is about 30, 35 years. You do a good job. So we've done a great job with this boiler. We've never had a problem with this boiler until the end of the winter this year, and we lost it for the weekend. Thank goodness when we came in on Monday, we didn't freeze up the building, and we were able to get it up and running, but we don't have any alarms, the control system is old and antiquated, there's no way of knowing until somebody shows up in the building. So the other problem with that system is that's the only boiler I have. We have 2 buildings that have a single boiler, that's one of them. So if the boiler goes down, we don't have school at Jefferson for weeks, period, until I get a temporary boiler put in at a great expense, order another one to replace that one. So one of the things you're going to see in this plan is in 2015 work, we're going to try to put another boiler. It's going to be not right now. So those are the safety risks by not doing, or by putting this as condition 1, year 1. I can give you multiple examples. We have other HVAC issues. If you have a roof that's failing or way past its life, it will lead to all kinds of problems down the road if we don't replace them. So we repair them, and we have replaced some roofs. Paving is another huge issue. I can't tell you how many incident reports Bill and I look at, like weekly, that somebody has tripped in a hole, tripped over some bad sidewalks or potholes. So those are issues that we're trying to address all the time. Is that good? Any other questions?
I am noticing there are some things that are tagged as LS items. So are those the items then that came up on our life safety audit of that building then the last time we did an audit?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what that stands for,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So some of those things are, I shouldn't say minor, but I mean in the big picture, some of those things can be minor life safety hazards, whereas others such as the boiler going out is a major. Is that correct? Or?
Yep. Real quick, Hubble is in that packet as well, and you'll notice that everything there is a condition 3. Hubble's a 6-year-old building. And so condition 3, you said is 9+ years, that would be 15 total, when we get up in 9 more years. And like we talked about earlier, this is a very fluid process, and we're not gonna just dust it off once a year and look at it, we're gonna always look at it. And we might have something that works great now, and all of a sudden starts to fail, and we might move that to a condition 2, or a condition 1 of some sort. So that will always be adjusted, this whole report will be, and we'll report back to you guys as we prioritize what work needs to be done. So those are the 4 new buildings. And I want to kind of go to the next document, which is the condition report. That one right there, thank you. So, coming out of the facility committee, we thought it would be good to summarize by building all the condition 1 by year, which we've done. And then we've categorized the 7 major categories, and kind of the consensus. Those are the biggest issues. So you'll see across the top, paving, roofing, flooring, mechanical work, which is pretty much HVAC work, electrical, doors and hardware, windows. There's actually an eighth column called other. That other would include stuff like casework, furniture, fencing, fire protection, some masonry work. All right, so as we look at the very top one, you can go to Bauer, and we've identified no work in condition 1, year 1, about $500,000 in condition 1, year 2, and $4 million in condition 1, year 3. We also included just condition 2 totals, so you could review that as well. And then if you go to the back sheet, scroll down on this as well. We've totaled all the conditions, year 1, 2, and 3, and condition 2, and we've totaled them by categories as well. So the important number to look at is on the far right, bottom right corner, is in condition 1, year 1, we've identified $10 million of work, in year 2, $10.1 million, in year 3, $31 million, for a total of $51 million plus. That is the important number. That is the number we need to focus on. For the very reasons that Mrs. Coghill and I were just discussing about the importance of the health and safety of the buildings and our occupants in them.
JR, that number increased from the last report due to the 4 additional facilities that we've included now, is that correct?
Pretty much. Yeah, it didn't go up a lot because we did refine some numbers and we moved some things around. And we're trying to get some work done this summer. And there's a huge completed pile of work that we've done in the last 4 years. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's over $11 million of work that's been done. All right, so are there any questions on that? Because this is a pretty important document.
What does FFE stand for again?
Furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Thank you.
I have a question, a couple of, actually. The number one, we're talking about $51 million over the next 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. I assume at some point we're going to talk about how we fund such a thing. And then secondarily, I want to make sure I understand also, when we do these, let's take Jefferson, we started on that one.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, we had a discussion, or, I don't know how many years it was, it's right around 2 years ago. There was a discussion about a $16 million, I think it was, improvement, or, reconstruction, whatever the case was. And now we're showing on this report about $3 million, was it, or?
5.6.
5.6, okay. you know, I need to understand how those, if we spent the 5.6, do we end up with a total usable building without complications? Or, you know, I'm trying to understand the relationship between those two things.
I'll take a stab at it, and then I'll let
Okay.
anybody else.
And again, I think the secondary issue again is how do we fund some of these things? We did, I think you mentioned we spent about 10 million in the last year or so, and that came from, as we know, a working cash bond. What opportunities exist in the future, or, you know, because I don't think we currently fund anywhere near these kind of numbers, you know, in our budget. So, you know, what is the secondary step?
So I answered your first question. We have reviewed the Jefferson plan from a few years ago. There were 3 options that the board looked at. One was just to renovate the school, and that was about, it had an $8 million price tag on it. One was to renovate and add on to the school, I think fill in the courtyard, and that price tag was about $15 million. And then one was to rebuild the building completely, the cost of $18 million. I think that's the plan we move forward with. The 5.6 equates to the $8 million. Let me tell you how we get there. So we, to renovate it, we had to do some drainage work. That's not included in this plan. And we had and all the fees that are associated with the construction manager, the architectural fees, the design and construction contingencies.
Temp facility.
Yeah, a temporary facility, about $500,000 was included in that. And those numbers added up to about $8 million. So this is a hard cost of just getting work done, and not all the soft costs associated with it. So the numbers do jive.
So the cost of,
The biggest one of those was the cost of relocating those students while that work was getting done. And that was, what was that
About
again?
$500,000.
$500,000, okay.
So this plan, we don't have to relocate the students?
It would depend, this is, so that I wanted, we're not presenting to you tonight an option for Jefferson, and I don't want that to get confused. We're simply telling you that if you did nothing to the building, if you made no program enhancements to the building itself, bottom line is these are costs then you would have to address over really it's the next 2 years. So we've got to do something with the building, or we've got to address these costs. There may be, you know, Jim, as you strategize how you approach that, that was also assuming that you took all of those repairs that were needed at Jefferson and you did it at one time as a renovation. And the time that it would take to do that does incur some other soft costs, like relocating of students. So that could very much still be something that would need to be considered, but this isn't a plan. This is just, we want you to know and understand what costs are in front of you at Jefferson absent any program improvement to the building or substantial change. Just costs that need to be addressed to take care of existing conditions in the building.
So if I understand it correctly, this is really just like if you said, gosh, my windows at home need to be replaced, how much does it cost to replace my windows at home? But for instance, when we were talking about just renovating Jefferson, there were things in it like bringing the toilets up to standard. And because it's serving a special population that involved a lot of additional things, that's not here. I don't see something like that here. So this is really, I think, just things that are physically right now need improvement. It's not related to whether or not the footprint or the items in the building facilitate the program of the building and the population it serves. And so, as I remember it, our original renovation included some of those items. It still didn't bring it up to a really great facility that you might go out and see in other districts that serve these kinds of populations, but it would be serviceable. Right now, this is simply repairing stuff that's broken, I think would be the way to put it. Would that be a good way to put it? Yeah.
I still have a concept, a problem with that, because, again, what we're saying is if we enacted this and said, okay, we're gonna find $51 million somewhere over the next 3 years, if I'm hearing that correct, that means that we really have 25% more we need. You know, I'm confused a little bit with that. Well, again, if you're saying that the 6 million, 5.6 million here compares to the 8 million because there's other costs that would be incurred to do a renovation, well, 5.6 million is a renovation to me, a big renovation. You know, the difference between those two numbers are these other things that aren't here, soft costs, you know, moving different students. So I guess to really do this effectively, if we said, yes, let's find that 5.6 million and do it, it's really going to cost us 8 million again. Am I wrong on that, or?
No.
Okay.
So what this does, with this one, we have two lenses to look at Jefferson. The first lens is just to fix the aging parts of the building. That's the $5.6 million we've identified here. That basically just makes a 50, 60-year-old building sustain elements of it to make it safe, roofing, mechanical systems, paving. It doesn't look at the ability of that school to support the unique programs and the spaces that we need to deliver an effective and ideal early childhood learning environment. That is the focus area 2 of our master planning effort, which this document doesn't address. We're just saying we're projecting $5.6 million of potential cost to fix what's going to be broken, or in some cases is already broken. It doesn't deal with the program ability of that building to support the kind of and provide the kind of environment that we need. So we're looking at it through one lens, not two lens, not the whole look. I don't know where the 8 million came from, so I can focus on the 5.6 million.
So then the 5.6 doesn't really get it done, is that what you're telling me?
That just fixes what is old, might break, has broken. It just fixes those elements of the building that have to do with the condition of the building. It doesn't address the elements of the building that support the program, the unique program of that age group and those students.
And I would just suggest, we're off target here. I think we need to get back to where these are just raw numbers. That was probably a bad topic, JR, to pick Jefferson at such a volatile topic. There's a whole master facilities plan that's part of this conversation tonight that I think will bring it all together. So I think this is a waste of time, quite frankly. We need to move on. These are just raw numbers. It's a plan that's fluid, as we've all said. We're identifying hard dollars. We're not talking about budgets. We're not talking about where we're going to get the money tonight. These are factual numbers for our information, and it's all going to be tied into the master plan. And I would just, respectfully just say we move on.
And I think that's a great thing to do, but I think it's important that anybody who's listening to this conversation, who hasn't been familiar with it all along, doesn't walk away with the perception that the numbers that were put out there last time were somehow wrong or inaccurate or highballed or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's the reason for the clarification on this conversation, is that this is truly just, as I said, fixing stuff that's broken, is all it is. And what we talked about in the Jefferson referendum was a whole different matter. And with that, I would say, yes, that is not the topic for tonight. But I wanted to make sure everybody was crystal clear.
Just to rephrase my question then. We're looking then at $51 million. I have to get this clarified in my mind. I'm trying to understand what we're looking at. We're looking at a $51 million, gotta fix it, as you're calling it, and we're not going to talk about funding it.
Right.
Is that good? Okay. All right.
Yes,
I agree with
this just identifies the need projected over 3 years, and just for reference, the biggest needs are in roofing and mechanical and electrical systems. That's where the lion's share of our needs are. And what we've drafted is we can look at all the Excel spreadsheets and charts, but we've drafted an overview of this part of our master plan so that we can have a succinct ability to communicate with our stakeholders, what the overall needs are and where they exist. And that's what this document is. This will be updated over the next couple weeks. And then eventually, all this stuff will be woven into an overall facility master plan for the district, which incorporates focus areas 2 and 3, which have to do with kind of the learning environment, not just the physical conditions of the buildings.
The only thing I would add to that is this list it's a maintenance list. This is about maintaining the facilities. There are costs in here, as we mentioned, for inflation and some other soft costs. What's not included is a strategy to get it done. So just as you pointed out, that as you phase some work, there might be an increase in cost, but there's also strategies to bid certain projects together to reduce mobilization and save dollars. And so a maintenance list without a strategy and a plan to get it done is, as Brad said, it's a list of items that need to get accomplished that needs to be incorporated into a strategy to how to get it done. And that will, in some cases, reduce costs, and other cases, work may need to be phased, and that could increase in costs. The concept overall is that as long as we've addressed every item with a fair price, the overall cost should be accurate.
Just the one thing that I'll add to all these numbers is these numbers are just estimates for us to use for our budgeting purposes. These are not costs yet. We'll get to costs when we actually go through the design process and the bidding process and start doing the work. That's when costs are realized. These are just budgets that we can take and put into our 5-year financial projections at the right point in time. So just you need to remember that these are just budget numbers for our use and planning.
I guess I'm going to ask the follow-up question, Matt. And when do we foresee that financial side of that conversation occurring?
I would anticipate that as you bring the master facility plan to a close, then you're going to have to shift into some discussions about finance. So I think probably you're not until both the needs, some of the programmatic elements that we've not yet talked about with, especially with track 3 within that plan, and strategy come together. I think that will come together in a master facility plan that will lead you into a discussion topic. And again, I don't know that there's a definitive answer to that as well, because we are in the very early phases of the development of that master facility plan, so I couldn't tell you tonight, nor I don't think anybody could on the facility committee exactly what the timeline looks like for completion to that, because we're very early, but it will, finance will come as you develop that master facility plan.
Okay, I'm just, again, I'm thinking in terms of, we have a year 2016 column here, and that's $10 million, and that's something that, these are broken things, maybe some that include some life safety concerns and so on. I just, I don't know how long we can wait on some of these to take that plan. Again, I don't want to become overly alarmed about this, or should I be, is the other question. What is the criticalness of that timing? So.
Yeah, and I guess the way that I would answer that tonight is that I do think one thing that this document does for you is it puts a timeline for the development of that master facility plan. So you do not have the ability to say, gosh, we're going to take the next 3 years to develop a master facility plan that incorporates these things, because you do have some conditions within your building that suggest that there are timelines for completing that. So I do think that the master facility plan will tie all these pieces together. I think the intention for tonight is to help the board, I think, understand that there is a little bit of a natural timeline to when that work, though, has to happen, because if not, you're gonna encounter some conditions within buildings that cause you to need to continue to do some emergency solutions, and that might not afford you the ability to use dollars wisely to address both physical needs and programmatic needs that a master facility plan affords you to do. And again, I guess the whole picture is that if absent the development of the master facility plan, you would be addressing this document piecemeal. You would be kind of going year by year and doing things to keep up your facilities, but not getting at sort of that long-term strategy and vision of, what can we do within, as you as you take some of these buildings apart to address some of these conditions, you know, that there probably are some natural opportunities to address some of the programmatic elements as well. That's what that plan's got to tie together. So I think, Jim, you're trying to sort of get to the end, and I get that. We can't do that tonight. You're not going to tie all these pieces together tonight. But I think you have identified a timeline tonight through which that master facility plan has to wrap together. And Brad and Jim, Bill, tell me if you...
And that was the intent of the way we, just if you remember, what month is it now? Back in February, I think, maybe it was January, I don't remember. When we talked about the overall master plan having 3 components, we intentionally accelerated this piece because we needed the numbers for planning purposes. We're going to be talking in the next couple of months about next year's budget. We want to know how much do we need to try to put into next year's budget to deal with these issues. But this all comes together with focus areas 2 and 3. That's going to take some time. We're just at the beginning stages of that. But this is a great tool to have kind of on the immediate building needs side that we'll use and then dovetail together sometime down the road.
Yeah.
It won't be too long.
I'm very pleased that we have this plan in place, and it, it's giving us some good insight. But the reality of it is what concerns me is how do we get there, and that's the challenge, I'll call it. So, I think this is great, and thank you for the effort of putting all this together, all of this. So, it's an important document, and it's a very major concern at the district level.
So, Jared, do you want to move on? I think you want to talk a little bit about year 0.
Yeah, it's a great segue for the last document, and what we've done.
Zero?
Year 0. You're critical. 2015. So we've taken a look at our Condition 1, Year 1 plan, and tried to pull together some work that we can get done based on some funds that we have available to us. And like we had mentioned earlier, I think Patrick mentioned about the coordinating and grouping things together to provide economies of scales. We have chosen this summer to focus a lot of our efforts on paving. So we have a bid going out next week. We're going to look at paving at 6 buildings. Jefferson, Lowell, Sandburg, Edison, Monroe, and North. Not the entire lots, but some critical areas in those lots that are bad. If you've been to Edison, you know that front area is not in great shape. So we're going to be bidding that work out in the next couple of weeks. We're also bidding out the boiler at Jefferson and some control work. And we'll come back on the 27th, I think is the next committee of the whole meeting, and we'll present those to you guys at that time, so we can get the work done this summer.
Just clarify that boiler at Jefferson, that's to add a new boiler to supplement the existing boiler to prevent the potential risk of that boiler going down in November. We can't have school. We have to wait for several weeks, if not months. And one of the things that's good about this, depending on what we decide to do with Jefferson, we can take the boiler out and relocate it, just like we can with the fire alarm system we put in a couple years ago. So it's a smart way to deal with this issue at a lower cost initially.
But not so in terms of the paving of the lots. If we were to do a push-pull on that site, the parking lot is the new building, so to speak. If we were to do a new building, would go where the parking lot is now, and we'd trash that all up. Huh?
That is specific to Jefferson. That is some dollars that we believe is absolutely critical. We have buses going on paving areas which are not set up for buses. Try to minimize that cost, but it's something that is pretty critical. I mean, in the reality, depending on what we decide to do with Jefferson, it's not like a next year solution. We have probably at least 2, if not 3 years we have to deal with this. So it's not a perfect solution, but the reality is it's something we have to do.
Let me maybe take another stab at what Mr. Matheson was asking a little bit, which is how do you foresee that process unfolding of getting to that synthesis of these numbers and the strategy? So would this be something that the facilities committee would sit down and say, okay, now we finally have all of our numbers for all of our different phases, here's what we recommend, we write off, is that something that the finance committee says? We've got these many dollars, facility committee, what do you want to do with it? Is it going to be something that administration sits down and looks at all those things and comes back and says, whole board, here's what we recommend? Maybe that's kind of what you're getting at, is what's going to be the expected process, if you even have thought about that yet?
Yeah, it's probably a little premature to answer that. I guess, you know, understand, and this is probably the update, the third piece we're going to cover a little bit tonight, that we are just going through completing the process of selecting an architect to work with us through the development of that master facility plan. I think as soon as that contract is solidified by the board, the very first thing that will get done is that exactly, kind of mapping out what does that process and timeline look like, at least in terms of the development of the master facility plan. I think as the master facility plan is developed, then there's the layer of finance that has to get added into it, and so I don't know that that's going to be, you know, kind of the core. But I think to answer your question, it is very likely going to be a combination of, you know, a core group working with the full board, working with some community groups and a lot of engagement out in the community, working with buildings together. So I think you're going to see a very involved and inclusive community engagement process in the building of the master facility plan. You know, when we get into the finance elements, I'm not sure. I don't have that answer, and honestly, I wouldn't even want to speculate tonight, because I think I'd be giving you an answer that I could very well be undoing 6 months from now.
You can certainly tell who's on the finance committee.
And you can tell who's leaving, because they don't go at it.
I'll just echo that. So when we have this set of data, and then we combine that with the other set of data that we're going to get through this next part of the master planning process, that's when the science becomes the art of developing the plan. So we might find out in things in our next set of planning efforts that leads us to decide that the stuff on this 110-page list, some of it may not be relevant, which would be ideal. So we have to go through that process, and as Jeff said, we envision this, and a lot of the discussion yesterday was about how do we engage our community to kind of an Engage 200 type process, and maybe other avenues to do that. But how do they understand the needs? How do they put priorities to that? How do they want us to think about different solutions, about not just the building needs, but the future? And how does that tie into educational opportunities? And so that's where the community engagement process gets integrated with the master planning process to create the plan. So we don't have a stop time on that yet. We need to talk with the facility committee. We need to hear about professional or community engagement discussions. That process will get more refined over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
And if I may add, Rosemary, there seems to be some coordination going on there, because the community engagement committee met this afternoon, and Jeff did a wonderful job highlighting the need, starting in the fall. The tentative plan is to have a state of the district address, which will focus on finance and facilities going the whole. And hopefully that will create opportunities to get community feedback on what's being developed, so that this can go hand in hand.
So that's the update on focus area 1.
I was just going to say, I know we've been trying for about a half hour to move on, so
And so Mr. Farley's going to talk about focus area 2
Are we
and
ready
3.
to move on? Okay.
Thank you. I just want to update the board on the process, and we've talked quite a bit about focus areas 2 and 3 and the master facility plan, where we're at in the process. The board's aware, I think, through some updates that Dr. Schuler has sent out, that we've had. We put out an RFQ process right before spring break. We received 12 responses to that RFQ. We whittled that down to 4. Mr. Gambiani and Mr. Paulson had 10 hours of fun in this room yesterday as we went through a interview process of those 4 firms, a pretty intensive process. Because of the RFQ process, we are required to rank based on the quality of the overall selection process. So we've done that. We've reached out to the firm, all the firms today, and let them know how that process ended up. We've asked the firm that was our highest ranked firm to give us a draft proposal without costs right now, just of what that timeline will look like, put it into a draft document form. We have some of that through the RFQ process and some of that through the presentations we heard, but we're going to get that back from them, and then we have to start having the conversation about costs, and then our plan is to bring that to the board at the business meeting in May for approval to move forward with that architect selection for focus areas 2 and 3. So that's just a quick run through over the timeline we've gone through. But again, thank you to Erica and Mrs. Farley. Stephanie sat in on the process along with Dr. Schuler, myself, and then our 2 board members. It was an interesting process to go through, and quite a time commitment for everyone involved. So thank you.
I'll just add that it was a unanimous decision amongst the committee where we are right now.
And then, I'm hesitant to say this. So when all is said and done and we have the plan, because the plan will include strategies, then the complete costs or the complete estimate for executing the plan will be something that will be in there. For example, let's say we are relocating students to do work during a school year. So that cost will then be in there because the strategy for providing that and funding that, or the need to fund that, will be obvious, so that we're not going to proceed down the road with this plan and then have surprise costs come up later. It'll all be there.
Right now, we're just gathering information. Some of that information comes from this, some of it information will come from the schools, some will come from the community. We'll put all that together, we'll integrate these 3 different elements. We'll share that with the community will weigh in. That will lead us to a plan. Some elements of that plan might be more important and might lead us to a different decision. It doesn't have to be a plan that's done all at one time and funded all at one time, because we probably know that's not even feasible. So the plan will lead to implementation ideas, which will allow us to put projected costs on those, and then we can think as a board sometime over the next 6 to 12 months how we want to approach that.
Just one other question, Mr. Farley. The last piece that John just presented, work for this summer, there is a funding strategy in place for the work that we are projecting for this summer, correct?
That's correct. We anticipate having roughly $500,000 available in our capital projects fund. That's where we did some of the work last summer. We had, when bids went out, we had favorable bids, so came in under budget there, so we have some fund balance that's remaining in there of about $500,000. We generally carry about $400,000 to $500,000 in our operations and maintenance fund for construction type projects. We also are going to be able to use some developer donation money on some projects that involve paving at some schools. So we anticipate having the funds available to do the work, assuming, again, our budget numbers have been pretty good here, and we're hoping to, hope that favorable bidding continues, and will be, obviously, that all comes to the board for final approval. And if there's items on there that we can't afford, we will just reject those bids and move forward with those items to stay on the list.
Are there any other board questions or comments, or are we ready to move on? Thank you so much. Oh, Mr. Bowen?
Yeah, Rosemary gave a thumbs up to Brad and Jim here and to Bill and everybody on it, so it's good. I know your work is basically just started, but what you've given us so far, I think it's so great and so helpful, so thank you very much, and God bless.
This is fun.
I don't know.
I say it in interviews, I know they're not fun.
Okay.
I will note that Mr. Matheson and I don't get thumbs up like that for our finance.
Somebody's got to pay for it.
Okay, are there any public comments on, no public comments? Okay, so we are ready to adjourn, but I do want to mention a little recognition this evening. You know, as many of you know, today is Administrative Assistance Day. And, you know, we have a wonderful board clerk in Mary Lou Sender. And she's not even paying attention. She's just typing away over there, kind of ignoring me. She's doing her job. Anyway, Mary Lou, we just want you to know how much we appreciate your work. And really, the Mary Lou provides such a valuable service to the board. The whole community, I think, should really know about it and appreciate what she does. She keeps us all in line, and that's one of the most challenging things she has to do. And she makes sure that we're within the law. She makes sure that we're here when we're supposed to be here, that we have all the information that we need to have, and that things run very smoothly. So I just want to publicly say thank you, Mary Lou, for all you do, and have a little small token of our appreciation.
Get back to typing.
Did you get all that?
Sure.
That doesn't need going minutes.
Anyway, if there's no other business, then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Vroman,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Swanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is now adjourned.
Have fun.